English translation, 535th contact Saturday, the 4th of February 2012, 15:18 hours.
And here I am, dear friend.
You have lost quite a bit of weight, my friend.
So you see it too, as well as various group members.
I noticed that already on the 24th of January because it is clearly visible.
Everybody thinks so, but it is only 8 kilos since the 19th of December 2011. At 5 kilos there was a break for the first time, and now at 8 kilos it stops again. There are always phases, as losing weight does not continue for some time, so it simply means that you have to keep going. But I do not have a problem with that, because since 1984 I have only eaten something once in the evening, but that has not stopped me from going up to 90 kilos a second time. For the first time I have gone down to 70 kilos, and I think that I will also make it this time with much reduced food, only I think that this time it will probably take longer and be more tiring. Actually, I was always 65 kilos until my health collapse on the 4th of November 1982, but then I gained about 20 kilos within a very short time after the collapse, after which I finally gained another 5 kilos. And now it is time to bite the bullet again, because I am simply uncomfortable with too much weight.
As I know you, you will not let up with your efforts in this regard. But whether you can lose as much weight again, down to 70 kilos, that might be questionable at your age. A weight loss down to 75 kilos, that seems real to me, but more I do not know. You also need the necessary substances, such as vitamins, trace elements, and minerals.
We will see. But it is precisely because of the vitamins, trace elements, and minerals that I have no problems, because I take them in addition to the reduced diet, and they really help me, and not just now, but since my health collapse in 1982. Without these food supplements, I could not have made it, because today's food no longer supplies these substances in sufficient quantities. This is disputed by many so-called experts, even though many of the human beings have fewer or no health problems as a result of these additional substances.
The negation comes from the pharmaceutical industry, which also rewards the persons you call experts for their false statements. It is absolutely all about profit, and the pharmaceutical companies can only make that profit if the human beings are suffering and sick.
To make profit, they are effectively and literally walking over dead bodies.
That is unfortunately the truth.
Then the question whether you can tell me the mass ratio with regard to all the coarse matter and dark matter in the universe, or whether you are also not allowed to do so.
There is no secrecy for this. The dark matter in the entire universe is about 7 times more in terms of mass than the total mass of all other forms of matter.
Then I have other questions. As early as 1975, I went deep-sea diving with Quetzal several times in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, the last time in 1989, using black light to show me deep-sea creatures. He said that it was only with this light, invisible to the eye, that it was possible to observe these creatures, because with visible light, like with spotlights, etc., it was impossible because the deep-sea inhabitants would flee from it. In this way, I was able to observe many deep-sea creatures that are still completely unknown to our terrestrial oceanographers and deep-sea researchers.
I know that, but I do not understand what you want to ask.
Oh, of course. The question is, can you explain to me how this black light works? Although the black light, as Quetzal also called it, was used as a spotlight, not a beam of light could be seen. Nevertheless, I could see everything that moved in this invisible headlight black light beam, but I cannot explain how this was possible. How does that work? Despite the deep darkness in the deep sea, I could see very far. Quetzal said that the invisible black light projector reached a good 2,300 meters.
That is correct, but we have such black light sources that can make everything visible at much greater distances. I am not allowed to officially explain the technology in question, but I am at liberty to say that it is a combination of a special infrared and laser radiation that produces very strong invisible light. in the area of which everything becomes as clearly visible even in the deepest darkness as it is in daylight and with focusing equipment.
Focusing equipment. Do you mean apparatus or devices such as focusing lenses, by which the depth of field of an object can be adjusted in relation to the observation?
That is the sense of my explanation. So this is called a sharpness lens.
I am not sure, but I think it is called something like that. And if I understand everything correctly, then you could compare this black light with what we have here on Earth with night vision devices respectively with residual light amplifiers. Only that with you, everything is in a much more highly developed form.
I can agree with this comparison.
On television, they have once again made a program about the conspiracy theories around the Bermuda Triangle. There is a theory, which we talked about before, that Atlantis existed in that area, which is absolute nonsense, as I know from you, because Atlantis was located elsewhere in the east. But now it is even claimed that in the Bermuda Triangle, in the supposedly sunken Atlantis, there is a giant crystal that emits very strong vibrations, which would cause ships to sink there, and also aeroplanes to crash if they were hit by the crystal vibrations. The reason why there is nothing to be found could be due to time tunnels through which everything disappears. But you once told me that only a few sunken ships and crashed airplanes have been found in the Bermuda Triangle, because of the currents there, which simply wash away ships and airplanes or their debris when they sink and get caught in the currents.
What you say is correct, and of course the story of the Great Crystal is based on a completely absurd conspiracy theory. There is probably nothing more to be said.
Good. Then the following. Recently, my childhood friend Meier telephoned me and asked me what kind of equipment was needed to color code the different stages of development, as you once explained that you could do that. He asked whether our scientists already had such devices or apparatuses.
They are spectral analysis devices which are also produced in a still quite primitive way on Earth and are used by the Earth scientists. Such devices analyze chemical substances by evaluating the emitted spectral colors. Astronomically, the whole thing is based on a procedure for determining the chemical and physical nature of celestial bodies, also by evaluating the spectral colors emitted by them.
He, like me, is aware of this, but his question is about what equipment is needed to determine the evolutionary status of the planets. As one of you said at the time and subsequently explained in private that such color analyses refer to the overall evolutionary status, which I did not question further.
Oh, I see. This probably refers to the overall picture of the planets. But the planets are not analyzed solely in terms of their level of development, but together with the average level of evolution of the planetary population. This says that the planetary color is determined by special spectral color apparatuses, whereby these determine both the stage of development of the planets, but together with the average stage of evolution of consciousness of the entire planetary population. Our spectral color analysis apparatuses thus determine two fundamentally different values, which are only of importance to us in this combination, because they specifically determine two different states of development, which can only occur in a common way. The earthly astronomical scientists do not possess such apparatuses, however, because this technique is unknown to them and does not even exist in their minds in an idea.
That is clear. Then I misunderstood something at the time in relation to the colors of the planets, because only such colors were mentioned, but not that it is a combination of colors in relation to planets and the population of the planets.
There really was a misunderstanding.
But one more question about that. It is likely that you also have other spectral color apparatuses that can only analyze individual factors, or...
That is correct.
Then at least there is no misunderstanding with that. But tell me, dear friend, when I was with Quetzal at the so-called Seal Islands more than 25 years ago, and I could see white sharks shooting a good 4 meters high out of the sea into the air while hunting seals, he told me that these sharks were only there at certain times and would only hunt. Can you tell me at what particular time this is the case?
No, because I did not deal with it, but I can ask Quetzal if you want an answer.
This is not necessary because it just came to my mind, and so I wanted to ask. But it is not important. But what I want to ask is this. Earth pulsates in different ways, and your father Svath explained this to me in the 1940s. So it also happens that the ebb and flow in the oceans and in large lakes creates a long-term pulsation, so to speak, which causes the phenomenon of land uplift, as Svath explained. Can you tell me what actually happens because your father has not given me a more detailed explanation?
The whole thing is that the tides of the seas and Great Lakes change the pressure on the seabed. And this is reduced by the low tide, while at high tide the returning water masses cause the pressure to rise again very sharply. As a result, the seabed is subject to ups and downs respectively, and at low tide the seabed rises considerably, while at high tide it is depressed again. However, this is not limited to the waters classified under the ocean and sea tides. But everything has an impact deep into the mainland and thus also into inland waters which are moved by this pulsation of the great ocean and sea tides.
Let me ask you about the fact that certain lizards, etc., have lost limbs that grow back. Can this also be possible in mammals and the human being with a certain medical technique?
This regenerative medical possibility is given to us, but I am not allowed to give any information about it, but only to say that it is a genetic imprint for self-healing. The decisive factor here is an extracellular matrix, whereby the body's own stem cells are also important.
I do not understand a thing about it, so let us leave it at that. Then I want to ask whether the human being can sleepwalk.
This requires certain preconditions which arise from the brain and can also be inherited genetically.
So it is also inheritable. More is not to be said?
Our directives would not allow that. But now, dear friend, it is time for me again.
Pity. Would have some more questions, but if you have to go, then goodbye, dear friend.
Goodbye.